All right, so I want to talk a bit about EFC. And this term, EFC, causes a lot of confusion, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety for a lot of families across the country. So EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. And more or less, it works as like a minimum understanding of your costs for college. It's kind of an index, but at many colleges, this is actually going to be your minimum cost for that year for each of your students, or for your one student if you have one in college. EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. So the part about EFC that causes so much anxiety and confusion and stress is the fact that it comes from kind of the collective income and assets and home equity of the family. So your parents' income, assets, and home equity, and the student's income and assets, and any home equity that a student might have. It's not common, but you know, it happens. So how do the financial aid forms treat my income and my assets? That's a great question. So I'll break it down from most impactful to kind of the least impactful. So income is by and large the most impactful dynamic that's going to contribute to your expected family contribution. So from high to low, student income is assessed at 50%, and it's going to increase your EFC 50 cents on every dollar that your student earns in income, right? So that's the income that's reported on their taxes. Parent income is assessed at anywhere from 22% to 47%, and it's kind of a sliding scale. The more income you make, the higher that percentage assessment is going to be. And assets for students is kind of a static 20%. So for every dollar that your student has in their checking account or cash equivalent accounts, it's going to be assessed at 20%. Parent assets, on the other hand, are only assessed at 5.64% currently. So if mom and dad have, a $10,000 checking account balance, you're going to have an assessment of $564 on that balance in the checking account. Now, another big one here is home equity. Now, the FAFSA is not going to consider your home equity, but the CSS profile is going to consider your home equity, and home equity, again, is assessed at 5.64%. Many parents are surprised to find out that there are actually 3 EFCs, 3 separate containers for expected family contributions. There is a federal EFC, and this is the EFC that is derived from your FAFSA, right? So this is how you access those federal dollars, by filling out the federal form, the FAFSA. And so you'll get your federal EFC. And there's also what's called the institutional EFC, and that uses a slightly different formula than the federal formula. And that's called your institutional EFC. And that's applicable to colleges that use what's called the CSS profile. So the CSS profile and the FAFSA are different, and your CSS profile EFC and your FAFSA EFC are going to vary depending on the type of assets that you have. If you have substantial amount of home equity, well, your EFCs are going to vary pretty substantially. And then there's a final EFC type. That's called the consensus EFC. And there's really only a small handful of colleges that even use that EFC, and they're usually very, very competitive colleges, and the way that they are going to treat student assets versus parent assets is going to vary just a little bit. But 3 EFCs: your FAFSA EFC, which is your federal EFC, your CSS profile EFC, which is your institutional private college EFC, and then your consensus EFC, which is only used by a very small minority of colleges here in the States.